So this is right size your loan requests. Again, this is just a disclaimer that this workshop is for informational and educational purposes only. The information provided does not constitute legal, financial, or professional advice. Participants should consult appropriate professionals for specific advice tailored to their needs. The recordings of our virtual in-person workshops will be posted to our public YouTube channel in the future. If you need support or referrals for any of those actual appropriate professionals, please consider booking a coaching call with one of our Change Labs coaches, or for us to share with you some of the professionals in our network. So just wanted to put that up there. But let's establish a baseline experience for you all. If you agree with this statement, put yes. If you don't agree with this statement, put no in the chat. I have done a startup budget for my business. I'll give you guys 5 seconds to respond. And then we can go through a couple more. Yes, no. Have people done a startup budget for a business? And whatever you define a startup budget is. I know a lot of us can get stuck on the technicality of terminology. Okay, so majority of people on this call is a yes. I know how much my business costs to run monthly or quarterly. Okay, if you agree with this, you put yes. If you don't agree with this statement, put no. Okay, the next one. I can create a usage of funds explanation. Or the other side, I know what a usage of funds explanation is. You can put yes or no, okay? I am starting completely fresh. I think I interpret this as in I have none of the above. Okay, well, now that we kind of have a little bit of footing and a little bit of a conversation going, we're going to go into something called building a plan, really. And this is about really understanding how to determine when we talk about just the right loan amount for yourself, learning what lenders look for and making sure that you have your documents to communicate your story. So when we talk about this, I use this in my design webinar, and as well as I just love this image so much. When we're building all of our documents or when we're telling the story to another individual, we want everything that we're creating or even that's representing our business to all make sense. In design, we use this image in the sense of like, why we need a logo, why we need brand guidelines. But I thought this image would be really helpful for us to visually understand what documentation does for our business as well too. When we say to develop documents or get documents ready, we're not just saying that each piece has to be, just created and they just serve a certain function. Instead, they all have to communicate to each other. So it obviously in this case, this is a very dysfunctional vehicle in piece by piece of what this looks like. So we're not trying to do this. We're not just creating documents for the sake of documents. We're creating documents to tell a cohesive story about our business, and especially the ultimate explanation of funds. That's really the vehicle that we're driving when we're building all of these quote unquote required documents of a lender to do so. So when you're building stuff or when you're getting things together, think about it this way visually, as in like, okay, so I've created this of my business plan. This is what my financial projections look like. And then this is like what I'm intending for repayment, or even to what my projections of the future are going to look like, and everything that I put together. Like, think of this as like your loan package. Like, do you want your loan package to look like something like this, or do you want it to be very clear what type of vehicle your business is driving as you submit your loan package? I think that's really the emphasis that we're doing in creating a lot of these loan ready webinars, and especially for this intent of a webinar. So, let's get organized. The first thing I love to start with essentially is, looks like a Dodge vehicle. The first thing I want to talk about that, before we get started into the numbers and everything, is really understanding why we have a BMC. Why do people request a business plan? How does this tie into at least minimally setting a goal setting list, or even to what a cash flow exercise looks like? For many people who've been through our programming here at Change Labs, especially the incubator program that we run almost every single year. We decided not to do it this year, but our graduates out of that program, the businesses that go through those months together with us, they work on something called the BMC, which is the business model canvas. And from the business model canvas, they work into 9 sections of their business. And this is a great resource for individuals who are getting started. And when we're talking about getting started, we're talking about a lot of definitions that are out there. How many of you on the call would consider yourself a startup business? How many of you would consider yourself just a business? How many of you guys would consider yourself not a business, but an entrepreneur? And what you do is not really that. And do any of these terms make any difference? I think for us, when we talk about these things, we highly focus in the incubator program a lot into these first couple of sections because they're the hardest sections to grasp, but they're also the first sections that we talk about the most to get people's concept and idea of what entrepreneurship is, what running a business can be. But we don't ever really spend too much time on the cost structuring and also to our revenue streams or even to a bit of our value validation and creation that we do. We do a lot of value creation, but we don't do a lot of value validation of this work. And that comes into the sense of the cost structure, the revenue streams, key activities, and key partners. So it's everything from these three sections here to the two bottom ones, which are later always kind of explained in the back of books that are written on the BMC, this middle sections of our incubator program before we get revved up to talk about marketing, all of these things. And so when we talk about a business model canvas, we're really kind of talking about, oops, my bad, I'm going backwards. We're really talking about, how do you know how much things are costing in your business? We don't really go into, so a little bit this touches on expenses of the business, as well as to how the business is going to be making money with the revenue streams, the different ways or even two things that you're going to be getting, people are exchanging dollars for a service or a product from your business. And so whenever we take this look, this is an example of an agriculture business. So they're talking a lot about the average unit price, even to like what other things they have to take in consideration when they're creating cost of their business. That whenever we think about this in the sense of a cash flow, that's where those two areas really kind of start communicating to each other, is that we really start to understand a lot of the business expenses. Many of you who have been in our programming may have heard us throw around that word cash flow. And those of you who've been in like the interviews with us for the NSBCI or any other loan program, or if you've been in previous kind of programming for other types of business support resources out there, they probably have thrown around this word called cash flow as well too. It can mean a projection. It can also mean a reality look at your expenses. But for this statement, some of them range from looking like an Excel sheet to this one as a simple table. But it's really tracking the flow of money going in and then out of your business. So if we were to recap, especially on your BMC, my bad, I'm sorry. It should really talk about this and your revenue streams together and how they interact with the top portion of your BMC. So that's where the communication comes in. And so when I see a completed loan application and I'm analyzing their documents, I'm like, how are their documents communicating to each other? Does their business model canvas actually show or even to adhere to the costs that are creating for operating activities, or what are they actually creating a revenue from? Is their revenue stated here and not stated on their business model canvas? That's how the communication between these documents really kind of start to make sense, especially on the lender side, and not just as a business coach looking at these documents separately. So take that into big consideration when you're building both, but this also takes into the form of our next section, especially when we're talking about, okay, so what does it look like when I don't have something as formal or a product? Then we can talk a little bit more about the get started funds that you need to as well. So again, these are just like really kind of simple examples of what looking like a cash flow can look like, the explanation of a net cash flow. But I just wanted you guys to show that this is where you can really start, is really understanding, okay, what are the expenses of my business? Tally them all up, put a total on them, and then also to where is all of the positive income of my business coming from? And then you get like a very simple cash flow for you to work with that kind of monitors the realities of your business. And then from there, you can work with a coach one-on-one like myself or Marsha, who's on this call, to really kind of help with the projection piece. Like, how do you project in the future of what your business is going to look like? There's a lot of businesses that are artisan based in which, they have a season to themselves. They have a season in which their business runs really great because they're doing a lot of in-person shows. There's also too a season in which they're not doing that great because most of the people have bought the gifts or things that they need the month before. So it's a slower month the next month type of thing. And we can essentially help talk through a lot of those examples and see how they individually affect you, or even to show you that pattern if it's happening in your business, your one-on-one coaching. So, but again, these are just simple examples of what a cash flow can look like. But from the lender's perspective, we can go a little bit further. So from here, some red flags have definitely been about like not understanding that you don't have a clear usage of funds. Also, to the business viability and plan are just disarrayed. And also, to you need to make sure that you have the cash flow. Oops, I think I got my things messed up. Nope, sorry. This is what the lender is actually looking for. It's looking for clear usage of funds, the business viability and plan, as well as a cash flow and repayment capacity that you will have, not just from your business, but also too if you have any additional income or a steady flow of income that's coming from your, I guess, like your already established, job or career or anything like that. But it's also too, lenders are looking for financial documentation, registration status if you have it, or any type of essentially status at all, credit history for traditional loan funds or even to funding that's out there for business specific loans, and repayment track record. And that's again through the credit history than anything too. But it's a little bit different, and that's why there's a lot of different social funds that are out there, like Change Labs' NSBCI, where we credit and as well as to collateral are not requirements for approval for our loans that we have. So whereas in traditional funds that are out there, like a banking business loan, whether it's through Wells Fargo, Chase Bank, or anything that's a traditional kind of financial institution out there, they do have those very, I guess, like lines in the sands of qualifications, and also to like what they're requiring for their loans to be approved type of thing. So, but what does this all look like to you in the sense of navigating the red flags and strengthening your applications? So for this, common red flags is really being vague or inflated use of funds, no clear repayment strategy, especially asking for a round number with no breakdowns, no financial documentation or projections. And I've seen this quite a bit, and I've coached on this quite a bit as well too in the past 6 months. I will say a lot of individuals, they approach loan funds or even to asking for pitching for money to a loan request to being all about round numbers and the highest number that's possibly available. Whereas that's great for a lot of different types of funding that's out there that's more geared toward like grant-based funding. However, for anything that's debt financing, that's where this workshop has come from. Debt financing is for you to find the right number that you can manage as a business owner. That's really what we wanted this webinar to really kind of touch upon for you guys to be best prepared. It's about understanding how do you know that this is the number that you need to create impact in your business? And you're probably like, well, yeah, I need $1 million to create impact in my business. Of course I do. Everybody does. And it's like, yes. However, the backside of that is like, well, how do you manage it? Like, there's some real realities that a lot of our businesses here on the Navajo Nation or essentially rural economies have to face, in the sense that they have higher expense structures to operate because, traveling from one place to the next is hard, especially too with businesses that have product base in which that they have to ship things with the current kind of political climate of, affecting their business and the pricing structure that they have, so there's a higher cost now to essentially operating a business. So a lot of you who probably have started this loan process or even to looking into this loan process for the first time, your probability number has changed dramatically over the past couple of months. And so I still urge you to really kind of look at the numbers. Look at the numbers of what you really need. And this comes from a lot of different places. One of the things that I want to really kind of get you guys introduced to is essentially a little bit more tools, which we'll go into. So for this next area, we'll talk about tools to calculate and understanding how to justify your amount. So there's things like a business budget, the cash flow forecast, and also to a repayment schedule. But also, we really want to look at how you're building these documentation. Oop, my bad. I'm trying to switch now to my fun little whiteboard. So many of you who've been on a coaching call with me before, or even who have been a part of my incubator sessions, because I do a lot of the workshops for our incubator program, I love to work in Canva and also to a whiteboard. But if I were to survey you all here again, this is how you guys were actively pulling data from you guys because we want to know where our businesses who attend these webinars are situating themselves. If you were to essentially poll yourself on these rows of ideas, where do you believe your business would lie with it? I apologize if you're not able to see this if you're joining us via phone, but would you consider your business an emerging, sustaining, possibly established, maybe a growth phase? Or would you consider what you're currently doing an idea still? Oop, and then while you guys are reading that and probably responding back into the comments, there's a question that we got from Kayla. How can you present previous financial challenges or credit issues transparently without hurting the application? Yeah, I think that's a great question. So there's a thing within your business plan, and this is why a business plan can always be a little bit more beneficial than a BMC for individuals, is because you can talk about this in your business plan and talk about, because to me, a business plan is technically theory. It's you trying to figure out what your business is doing, in the future for future situational things. So, for example, if you unfortunately see that you had an opportunity to move into a physical space right off the bat in Albuquerque, New Mexico, then all of a sudden, your workforce was highly dependent on, young kids in the community, and all of those young kids in the community ended up, graduating and moving off to college. Then if anything, you can talk, and then you had to move out of that physical space because you were not able to supplement a workforce. You can always talk about that in your essentially your business plan as a way of like, for our goal setting, we hope to essentially go back into a physical space. And now that we understand like the sizing that we can handle as a capacity for like a 3-person team, to even now like we need this funding for a food truck because we're currently still vending in person, but we can definitely handle and continue to see the positive outcomes of having a food truck for this funding. We have our time, like our targeted audience ready and prepared for us to come back out there and relaunch our business, or we can essentially even if it's like worse financial, or even to not worse, but like just more financial mistakes that you feel are really harder to be explained, you can always talk about them in the sense of like almost inverting them in a way that's like, we learned from this experience by doing this time around. Like we explain it in a way that like, what steps are you taking this time around to strategize to prevent that, or even to what did you learn from it that you are now incorporating it into your business to avoid, or also to, if it does happen and it's a reoccurring thing, other things that you're preparing and putting in case that is something that happens in the future again, type of thing. Oh, nice. Emerging data to forecasting. Oh, okay. Nice. Perfect. So we have a person who's an idea waiting to go into emerging. And there's a person who's in emerging. I don't know where forecasting is, but I'll say emerging into sustaining. Great. We have a lot of resources on this. So that's wonderful. I will say It is harder to see a lot of individuals who are in this stage of orange or even in this stage of orange. The more I've worked with entrepreneurs, I will say even this, I even have a hard time essentially pinpointing where my business exists within. And so I like to think of it in the sense that like, am I constantly in a reactive state to things, or am I or am I able to be in a more proactive state of my business? And when I mean proactive versus reactive, I really mean that I'm kind of able to create an operations, but in the sense that I don't have enough cash flow, positive cash flow to be starting a portion of that to be testing new operations of my business type of thing. So there's our businesses that are out there. Think of like those huge tech businesses that are out there, especially like Apple products. I love Apple products so much because I don't think I could survive without iCloud Share or AirDrop. But when they first started out, they really kind of just had the iPod and that situation. But as they started to get a lot of positive income from selling essentially iPods, these like portable MP3 players, that they were able to go into further technologies, not just essentially systems like their computers that they had, the devices that they had, but then they started to go into like, they started to test things out of having enough positive capital or even to like infusions into capital of an idea that's like, hey, let's talk about cloud storage. Let's talk about like storage out that doesn't exist, but it's like our data storage than anything, or how do people buy more data type of thing. And so Apple obviously at that point turned into a proactive stage because they were investing into a new idea or product of their business. While we see this in small businesses sometimes too. Like there's some small businesses that have been doing so well of positive income. I think of, I think of Cheekbone Beauty that we just recently had at Tuba City. She started essentially with her products on through a manufacturing warehouse in which all she did was essentially put the product, like her name of her business on the product, and then she was able to ship it out to individuals that way. But then as she started to really rethink and also get more investment into an idea that she wanted to build a sustainable and also to a truly clean makeup product, she started to kind of go into a proactive stage of her business and started to really, you know, create that of her product line that she has of her business. And now she, has different collaborations. She's able to launch a new line of limited released like travel size products now where she only sold a full size product. So things like that. So now she's in a proactive stage versus a reactive stage of where a reactive stage is like, okay, I'm I don't have enough money to essentially I'm more than breaking I'm more than breaking even, but I'm not expanding in growth in any other direction. I might be able to hire on additional work, but am I hiring on people to optimize my business, or am I hiring on people to help me proactively change or explore new ideas in my business type of thing too? So I think of it that way as well in a lot of these stages. So definitely, if you want to have a conversation about yours, please feel free to book some coaching call with me and I'd be happy to talk to you about it. But nice. So we have people like pretty much in the first kind of areas of our stages, which is awesome. So let's go from here. So when we talk about documentation, especially those who are trying to get ready, so many of you probably have seen this loan preparation checklist from Change Labs for NSBCI program. Is there any of you guys who like this is just so overwhelming? And also too, this is like really hard for you to develop of resources. I think this can be very intimidating for people who it's the first time them approaching building an loan application for the first time, especially this explanation usage of funds or even to the business plan and the interim financial statements. I think we have the most questions in these areas because people don't know how to build it or even to what the criteria is of acceptance. So for me, and this is more an example for those who are really kind of talking about a BMC, or even to that they had a conversation with Change Labs coach and then they heard about what a BMC is. So I started to create a little bit of a tool to help. So here's some BMCs that I helped to essentially work on, and also to have coached and whatever. And I thought they were great examples of what is pretty much good to go and is a pretty good evaluation of me reading through and understanding, or even to having somebody walk through and talk me through their BMC, that I was like, oh, I totally get what they're saying. I see the vision of their plan. I see the way that they've led me through their BMC of the 9 sections. This is awesome. And also too, there's some that are not, that obviously need a lot more work and that are not ready. So for me, I think it goes to show, even though this is one coming from Change Labs, when this person had essentially walked me through this stuff, they only checked what they believe was essentially apparent to their business, or what they had thought was something that they considered in their business idea. And so this doesn't give me a lot of explanation. There's no further explanation. I really can't understand too much of what this business does. There's not really any specific kind of examples. There's no specificalities to it all. It's all very, very vague. So I don't like this. So Ed, I said that the BMC was a business model canvas. That's what we talked about here before. But the next thing too on this is that, like, this is the next one. This is the next tier that I would consider that needs a lot more help in one-on-one coaching, is that yes, but this is still like very general. This isn't really talking too much about, this could be really any business. The more that I think about this, I was like, oh, okay, so, but like, what do they actually do? I don't really know what they do, what they could be. It could be really kind of anything that's out there. So it's a little bit too generalized. Whereas some of these, they get really kind of specific, and they get into like really understanding about what they hope to do, how do they hope to personalize it, all of the thought that kind of goes into it. Like, that's what we're currently trying to really kind of look upon, is like, okay, so what are you understanding of your business that you need to think through just organizing your thoughts onto the BMC. And so these are kind of like examples that I've looked for in my incubator program when we helped entrepreneurs essentially build their BMCs, of like, okay, so how can we get you from this point to this point? And it's honestly asking a lot more questions. It's asking, okay, tell me more about your business. Tell me about this about your business. And it's a longer conversation of a lot of the specifics that we end up recording and just like kind of throwing it onto this organizational BMC, that we're like, okay, so everything that you told me, that's how it fits into this pocket. That's how it then fits into this pocket. That's then your value proposition. That's who then your revenue streams is coming from. So it's a longer conversation, and that's what you typically get out of the one-on-one coaching that we have. So yeah, so that's a really kind of good example that we have here. For the cash flow, which is always very intimidating for a lot of people, let's kind of start with a little bit maybe what's greenlit first. So when I work with people on cash flows, especially those that's the first time ever, I like to start from a perspective of like, okay, let's not start in the green. So the green typically is all of the positive income coming into the business. I like to start in the yellow, because the yellow is where these are recurring expenses, or even to just expenses to make the business make money type of thing. And so for me, I like to split it up in the sense that these are our operating costs. Everything below this brown line is our supplies. I like to really organize a lot of the expenses that we have. And also too, when I'm coaching individuals, I'll highlight them of, if they're specifically looking for a number of funds that they're asking for, I like them to highlight that as I'm working with them. Because I'm like, okay, so what month of that year that we're projecting into that you hope to receive that funding? Because as a lender, from the lender's perspective, we like to see, okay, how does that make an impact to the sales of your business going forward. That's really what the cash flow, and that's how the cash flow is analyzed for most lenders, is that, okay, if you receive in December $8,000, how does that positively affect your sales in the following months? Not the immediate month after, because that's unrealistic a lot of the times, but instead, how does that look the following months after, or even to the following a couple of months after of what you're preparing. And all of these things, especially to the sales strategy, to like we can't just only ever see this as a linear buildup, because that's unrealistic as well too. So for here, these kind of pitfalls, or even to this is where like the seasonality starts to make sense of like, okay, so they stated in their BMC that they're selling to, you know, these individuals in their customer segments, and that this is a relationship that they're going to have with it by creating through these channels and so on. And we're going to have our cost structures this way, that we start to see that the type of business that they plan to have through their BMC or even to their business plan starts to make a lot more sense in their sales strategies of like what months they're making a ton of money, or even to what operating costs they're doing of marketing in the months before or after the, like during those periods of when the money's going up and down type of thing of their business. So if I heavily use social media, or I launch my website for people to buy online in a certain month, so they have more ways of purchasing from me than just in person, then, theorizing that like if I do all of that together in my business plan, and I tell that story through my business plan, then my projections can say that, yeah, by March, by this holiday season or so on, I will have more sales than I did the previous year, or I'll have more sales than before I had a website type of thing. But I'll also too probably have more expenses because I have to do shipping costs. I have to now think about packaging costs, things like that. So, it has to start telling a story. And that's why your expenses, if your revenue goes up, most likely your expenses are going to go up a little bit as well too. And whether that's labor costs or anything like that. And so when we talk about a loan amount, a lot of people are just right off the bat like, yes, I need $50,000. And I'm like, awesome. How did you get to that number? Like, how do we build that into your cash flow, and how are you spending that down? And that's where the pink comes in, really understanding when I coach through people's cash flow of like, okay, so these are all the areas that you spent this $8,000 or $50,000 over the course of 4 months. Like, this is what the cost that you're doing. Other traditional financial institutions out there would want you to spend the money within 60 days or 90 days. So, think about that as well too. If you're looking at other options of spending, you need to also know how many days do you have after receiving the loan funds that you have to spend the money, because that's the other thing that are great questions to ask the lender and lending institutions when you're looking for loans out there. And the same thing with grants as well too. I think there's also too some grants out there have a requirement of what you have to spend the money by as well too. So that's how I like to look at these cash flows. And when I see things like this, or even too if they're not highlighted like this, it starts to make sense where this person just started their business. They also too put down below, they'll have something in their bottom lines of their assumptions of like, yeah, I didn't really start until this, or even to their business plan starts to talk the story through August through November of like, yeah, I didn't actually start my business until December. I was actually just creating inventory that whole entire time from what I previously had of April through July. And so they're just building inventory this whole entire time, but there is no operating expenses during that time because they just are using the materials from previous months. So that's how your documents speak together. And that's where the story for the lender is then seen from all of that documentation. So However, the thing that's missing from this, of course, is the loan payment. So whenever you're doing a cash flow, you always want to make sure that you're essentially inputting a loan payment. And when that's going to be enacted, when you hope to expect the first time, when the first grace time is. So for this one, depending on their loan repayment plan that they have, we'd probably start seeing in February a 200 to let's just round it off, like a $200 monthly payment kind of being put into their expenses, which could affect their cash balance here. And also too, if you have any owner's investment, that's talking about like if you're putting money into the business that's not being generated by the sales being conducted by the business. So for example, I'm just going to make this really, really easy, that if I had a lemonade stand and I didn't get a loan to open it. Instead, I put $100 into my business in April. Then I'd put $100 here of owner's investment. My cash balance is probably $0. And then I make in the month of April, maybe I make $200. So then I technically have three, but then I talk about all of the operating expenses that I had, from foam cups to a table to a chair to the water, sugar, whatever I'm building up my lemonade stand is going to be in here. And then say I took the money from my mom to start the business, then I would tell her, hey, by the end of June, I'll pay you back. So then I have to pay her back like $30 or $35 every single month. And then my cash balance then goes back up to being the top of the next very month. And so probably I'll have like $160 or maybe only $75. And maybe I have supplies left over from that first batch of expenses. So then I start to see that where my positive income starts to take effect. So that's kind of how you read a cash flow. And that's also how you essentially go through a cash flow as well too, for realistic things. But for projections, it gets a little tricky, but we can help you through one-on-one coaching sessions, is really understanding the seasonality of your business. Okay, so for this example, this person is actually building inventory because her sales season is December through March and April and June. So technically December through June is her sales time, and that her product is very slow of building. So she builds it from July to November. So in that downtime, she's really either marketing or even to catching up on building her inventory, in which she would explain in her business plan to individuals about why she needed $8,000. But we want to continually see, a positive impact to your sales that realistically makes sense, that like you're making money, yes, but you can also handle this loan payment. That's really what this cash flow helps essentially exemplify for people where it doesn't make sense. So my favorite one was this one that was generated, which is kind of, I had a hard time reading myself, but people put out their own, cash flows that are out there. So if there is a $0 thing, so for example, this business never spent any money on gas, just get rid of the line. It's not needed because it can look very, very messy. So I think if anything, from a lender's perspective, like this can be like very hard to read very quickly, and also you want to make it easy, and also you want it to feel like you know what you're doing. So for me, this could be slightly a little bit of a red flag. That would be like, do they know what a cash flow is? And as I go into this a bit more, it becomes a little more clear that they don't know what a cash flow is, because they made and projection that they would be making the same amount of money every single month for a year. And that's not realistic, especially comparing that to their business plan and the intention that they had of their product. And so this would not make a lot of sense as a reoccurring generation of business. So that was like a big red flag for me as I took a look at this. And also too, that the owner's investment was constantly 200, or it wasn't constant, but like there was consistently an owner's investment into the business over the past 12 months, where for me, I would want that explanation in the business plan if they didn't include it, because that'd be one of my very first questions is like, why is your constant like owner's investment into this? We're lending you almost $6,000. Why do you contribute almost $1,500, $1,460 into this business over the course of a year. Like where does the 60,000 really go to, or 6,000 really go to? And so I really, I think that's where I'm a little confused, and that's where I took it from up here. But they also show that they never received the loan either, or what month they're anticipating the loan to come from. And so this, or even to also if they can handle a loan payment. So this really doesn't have a lot of explanation to me. Instead, it looks really nicely done and completed, and they had a wonderful template. But obviously, this cash flow needs a lot of work, and it doesn't make any sense, especially with me have seen their BMC or the business plan. It, like, I think if anything, my critique on one of when this was presented to me was that, like, I'm if I were to go back to your business plan, especially your cost structure and your revenue streams, explain to me how you get to $1,800 a month. Because based off of the cost structure and also to your pricing point, it doesn't make sense of how many then units you have to sell or services that you have to do for you to reach this number consistently every single month, and the hours that you hope to contribute to this business. So, things like that have to make sense. That's what we're trying to do. So, but a lot of people, when they come to me and they come to Change Labs, they always ask a lot about bookkeeping help, which my question back to you guys, I'm sorry if this looks a little like, if you're getting a little motion sickness, I'll zoom out just a quick second. Okay, perfect. So when we talk about TA bookkeeping, many of you will probably be like, oh, we just went over TA bookkeeping. That was the cash flow. But to me, the term bookkeeping is way too general. Just like when people approach me for quote unquote marketing support, I'm like, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. So when I talk about TA bookkeeping, I talk about setting up a bookkeeping system. That means either choosing the right bookkeeping method for yourself, setting up account software most likely, or establishing a chart of accounts. Also, bookkeeping TA is more specifically could be called recording financial transactions, that's managing your receipts, a bank reconciliation, which is cross-referencing, or even to invoicing and payments. If you are trying to do all of these and these things are not what you're currently doing, I would highly suggest working with a bookkeeper on some of these things to get started to be able to produce financial documentation, such as your profit and loss sheet and your balance sheet, and finally your cash flow statement, because cross-referencing and your managing receipts will heavily help you understand your cash flow, and also to establish the right type of system that you're going to be doing, whether it's cash versus accrual that you're doing. Even the invoicing and payment system, you'll be shocked at how many people don't know how to create an invoice. So if anything, I would make sure that you have that essentially established for your business and include that into your business plan of like, this is the way that my financials are going to be set up, and this is how I hope to navigate a lot of this bookkeeping process. So when we talk about financials, it's not just those documentations. A lot of lenders are looking at all of this management. So I hope you really kind of do start looking at this even from like a very basic concept of like, okay, I'm going to write into my business plan that I'm going to do cash this way. I'm going to be invoicing at the end of the month, or I'm invoicing on Fridays every 2 weeks type of thing. And it'll make the other larger topics a lot easier to handle. So I would really consider taking a look at all these bullet points, seeing which ones are currently organized or not yet organized, and working from there, because it's going to make creating the P&L, the balance sheet, and as well as to your cash flow projections so much easier when you start actually working with a bookkeeper. You should know the finances of your business. It's going to be an intimidating thing. It's also going to be a learning curve for a lot of individuals, but it is a necessity as an entrepreneur to highly know the financial expense of your business, because you hope to grow, you hope to be sustainable, you hope to pay yourself. I think that's the thing that's missing from many of these cash flows, is when we talk about the owner's withdrawal, which is missing from all of these cash flows, I think. So when you take a look at this, Yes, we're breaking even, we're doing probably better, we're here, but at the same point, we want to get to the point where your business is able to pay for your personal expenses and able to make you money and not just the business money. So that's why you need to know about a lot of these things in this area of bookkeeping. There's a lot of YouTubes that are out there. We essentially create workshops around some of these topics, especially for sole proprietors or solo entrepreneurs. But you to have this knowledge is so critical, because also too you can find where the leakage is in your business and where you're paying way too much in certain areas and probably you don't need to. So I would highly suggest you guys taking a look at something like this. Let's see if there's anything else I have to cover. Oh, so business plan. We've been talking about it a lot. So this is like a great thing that I worked with another graphic designer. So she talked about how you can essentially create your business model to look like a pathway to lenders. I think this is wonderful. I love seeing this, especially in pitch decks. People who essentially are pitching to me in a deck that they show me the modeling of their business versus me trying to read quickly through a business model canvas. But for this person's business, they do outreach, then there's an order that happens, they build the order, there's a warranty guaranteed with their order, then they go out to delivery and they provide additional care for their business or for their customer. This could be different for a lot of people. I think I've heard people who are like, well, what if I don't build my product? And also to what if I don't go to vending spots to build my product or to do my outreach? So that could change. Maybe you don't have an ordering system, or also too it's a little bit different, but I think mapping this in this way of a flow is really helpful for you to not only organize your ideas, but create an operation of your ideas as well too. So for example, if I were to change this into Change Ops' perspective, which I am going to right here, we would also do outreach in the sense of a booth, but we would also do like conferences. We would do, talks, our website. So our website would be kind of an image of this. But notice, if you haven't already, that what we're talking about in the modeling is really talking about our channels. So our channels is what we're talking about when we're trying to outreach, when we're talking about outreach. And the order is essentially kind of this part to here is our value proposition, and then our customers are over here. Like, who is going to start in this pathway this way? So this is our channels in this box, our value proposition here, and then this is going to be like, sometimes this is where our partners come in. So this is where like our key partners are. And then what the customer is then doing is essentially like paying for this. So this is where the cost structure is at. And if you have multiple of these pathways, then all of those are the revenue streams. Sorry if my handwriting is pretty bad. Oops, you guys didn't see all of that. But so as I said, here is like your channels in which people are going to, be aware of you. Your customers are the people going through it. And then this area is essentially your value proposition. And then those last pieces sometimes where your key partners and resources come in, or any of these other points. And then if you have multiple of these streams, then you do the same thing to build more revenue streams for your business. So I like to think of a lot of these things in visual context because I'm a visual learner. I don't always like learning through documents. But as always, if you are a visual learner and you need a lot more one-on-one help to understand this stuff, please feel free to book a one-on-one coaching call with me. And I'm happy to doodle on Canva whiteboards with you to understand, and also to help work out some ideas that you may need to include into your business plan. But I think if anything, I told Raquel that I thought that this was only going to take about 45 minutes. I think I was kind of on the spot of that, but we're ending at the top of the hour. So if you guys ever need any more help, please feel free to reach out to a Change Labs coach. We have wonderful coaches on our staff to help you more with any of your ideas that you have of your business, or even to get better prepared. We're happy to review documents and pair you up with some professionals in our network that can help you with furthermore expertise help. So yeah, I hope you guys will join us for a lot more of our workshops in May. I believe we have them posted on our events page already. A lot of them that have to do with our loan preparedness workshops that we have for NSBCI. Yeah, and Change Labs alumni, please come back to us for coaching as well too. You can book it through the same link that Raquel put into the link that's also found on our events page for, meeting with a Change Labs coach. I think there's a lot of alum that I have come across in conferences that they're like, I needed your help, Holly. And I'm like, I'm here. I'm here to help you. So please feel free to come back into our little, coaching sessions. You're not done with your business and business ideas, and we're not done helping you. So yeah, but I hope you guys all have a wonderful evening, get home safe, or even to eat something yummy tonight. So but I'm here for any questions if anybody has. So if you're good to go and you don't have any other questions, I will see you guys next time. If not, I will stay on for more questions. So awesome. Well, guys. Oh, just the last question above. Oh, let me see. I'm so sorry, Kayla. Where did
you want me to read it off, Holly?
Oh, well, I guess is it in between idea emerging, or is it the one that was before that?
Mhm. Idea emerging.
Okay, I'm in between idea and emerging. Do lenders value certifications, education, or experience when there's little financial history? Yeah, I highly believe that. Well, and also too, I think many people value the experience that you have. So attaching a personal resume is wonderful, I think, especially when you don't have a lot. I would also say that I would talk about how your hours of dedication in building this business, or even to like the progress that it took from you to start this business, or even like the small little milestones that you're celebrating in building this business. Like, for example, I can talk about mine. I am a solo, or like, I guess, like, I have a graphic design business in which that I could bid on other projects to be a part of, but I've been off and on with my graphic design business for a number of years. And if I wanted to pursue it full time, I think what I would tell them is, one, I would create a portfolio of the work that I've done in the past, even if they're small projects. I would also to talk about like my own experience as a business coach of also advising other graphic designers of what their work was, or even to modifying it or building other types of design of other things that I would consider design, which is like program design to like other operational systems of design, to show them that like I am organized and structured, or even to understanding that I can also translate really well of a client's idea through mock-ups, or even to in a conversation. So like I'm pulling in from like all different areas. That's not just like, oh yeah, I want to bid on this project because I'm a graphic designer type of thing and I can totally do it. It's more of like I'm incorporating all the other things that I have within it. I could also put in there that like I have, attributing to my degree from college, I also minored in studio art, things like that. Like I think you could essentially build into your business plan, because the part of your business plan as well too is that you have to talk about yourself, the people who are on the team. So you talk about your experience and your own understanding of the industry, or even to as an individual who probably had to interact with and like interact in that space. And that's the value proposition that you also bring out of your business of like, I've been through this system almost on the other side indirectly, and I've helped execute this way. So like I now bring that to my business so that people are aware of this way as well too. So, I mean, Kayla, we can also talk about it a lot more in detail on a coaching call as well too. I know I'm being very nuanced because I don't want to put you on the spot and ask for more information. And two, I'm trying to answer your question in a broad strokes. So perfect. Awesome. Well, guys, keep the questions coming or stay for the vibes. Oh, I'm trying to think of other really good things that I've seen in the past that I've been like, ooh, let's help on that. Oh, oh, when we're talking about the right number, I suggest people. So I think this is the I can just reiterate this point for people who have a cash flow. When they get to their expenses, I most likely tell people, okay, if you were to not have this as a stress of a cost, how much, like, because we know how much it costs your business, how do we then essentially, like, what is the goal in your business that you are trying to do, and how does your cash flow reflect that? Of how does your cash flow start to reflect that? So for example, me as a graphic designer, if I'm looking at my business and at the moment, I think it costs probably it's pretty low efficient because I'm not going full time. If I was going to go full time, I think it would cost me about $5,000. And I'm doing a wonderful example of what you shouldn't be doing because I'm just throwing the number off of the top of my head. But because I haven't done a cash flow on it. But if I did, I know the cash flow would show that my cost expense for my business currently, because I'm not doing it full time, is pretty low. It's probably $150 a month. And these are all red flags that I'm doing right now. Like I shouldn't say probably, I should not say, like these are all things you should not say in the loan interview with people. Is not like, ooh, probably, maybe off the top of my head, I don't have the papers in front of me. Those are all red flags. So everything I'm doing in this example is bad. However, in the sense that as an example for cash flow, if I wanted to show impact and find a better number, I would start looking, yes, I would start planning all of the expenses that it costs me. And also, too, my goal is okay, I want working capital for 3 months. What would allow me to personally cover my expenses for 3 months of the operation of my business? And also to allow me to generate income to get 4 contracts for a year type of thing. So like that's a very specific goal. And I would write that in my business plan of my intentions of having this money for $5,000 type of thing. And then my cash flow would explain how I would spend it down of my expenses and things like that. So that's how I'd be better prepared and what I would talk to with a change labs coach. But I would not say any of this in the interview because that would be no bueno. So yeah, if I build a template to get a good sense of work projection and cash flow, can I share it with you before our coaching session? What do you suggest I do before our session? I suggest you always come prepared with documentation of what you want to work on. I would not, I would also to have an explanation of what you would want done, and also, or like in the sense that it's an expectation. So like when people are like, well, take a look at my cash flow. And it's like, oh, well, yeah, I can take a look at your cash flow if the numbers make sense, but I also need to see if it works with your business plan or even to like any other documentation that you hope to send. Because again, we're trying to create a whole picture together of the documents. And sometimes not just reviewing one document is going to help your other contributing documents. So I think if anything, I would, as long as it like, as long as I don't know. I guess that's a really good question for me. As like, what should you prepare coming to a coaching session? Prepare to have those documents. Walk me through what you currently have. I think the best thing in the world is to prepare for coaching sessions to be practice for what you would tell the lending officer, or if you had a chance to tell the person that you would want for funding, you would use those opportunities in my coaching session to essentially practice through that. And I can help give feedback in that way of like, okay, so this is where it doesn't make sense type of thing. So yeah, I would prepare that. What would you say is a common cash flow mistake new entrepreneurs make? Ooh, they create linear revenue streams or linear cash sales. Or like, yeah, I made $200 and then I made $400 and I made $600 and $800 and their expenses never change. And I'm like, oh, how'd you make all that money? And they're like, oh, because I started selling a lot to these people. And I'm like, what people? And then they're like, well, I'm going to go to Santa Fe Indian Market. And I was like, okay, well, Santa Fe Indian Market for a booth costs about $1,500. I don't see that booth expense on your expenses for your business. So, most areas that you have to vend now have a fee to it. So where's the booth fees that you have in your business and things like that? Like that's the most common mistake I see. And then also to just other things that they also believe, I think if any another common mistake is that entrepreneurs believe everything that shows on that cash balance, that sales number and the cash balance is their money to keep and work with when it's not. That's the business. That's not theirs. That is the money that is to the business. The business hasn't cut you a check yet. So, and that's where they start essentially commingling their expenses from personal to the business expenses, is that they start to see, oh, I have $5,000 in the bank. It's like, ooh, that might be your banking business account, but that's not your account. Like you have to then work towards building a system that you either pay yourself once at the end of each month or you pay yourself every two weeks. And what does that number look like to keep your business sustainable? So
Hi, hello.
yeah, hi.
Yeah, can you? Yeah, I the template you showed earlier. I just want to. I guess I booked a coaching session with you tomorrow or the 6th next week.
Okay.
I built a template similar to what you showed, and you just talked about earlier that that the person made the same income over the same period or over a month or 12 months or whatever. But I did build a template where I project how many services I'll be providing in one day. And then, so we're going to be living on site and we're going to be there, we're going to be living on site. And so we might be able to be open 7 days a week. But let's say we have, we're open only Monday through Saturday. So I projected each day, just kind of assumed how much services we'll be providing per day. And so one day, and then I did the whole week, added that up for, the whole month. And then the whole month, I did all 12 months. So it's projecting the whole year on a day-to-day basis. So if you change one number, let's say whatever November 6th, whatever day time, I change that number to from 4 to 5 services. And it projects it all the way through and also calculates well, I just wanted to share with you and then see, what your feedback would be because it can calculate the number of like COGS, the cost of goods, and also the cost of salary wages. So it breaks that all down for you, and then it also even calculates how much you'll be paying for recycling fees and stuff like that. So just wanted to know if I can share that with you so that we can kind of go through that because I'm more visual, like you said you are, and so that's how I did my template. I did per day, per week, per month for 12 months, a whole year. So it gives you
Okay.
an idea of what per day, how many services you predict you're going to do on that day. And then also you talked about the seasonal stuff, like the days that you'll expect to do more services or the week and stuff of that nature. I kind of explained it in there and it's kind of in there. So I just wanted to know if I can share that with you so that maybe we can go over it when we have our session.
Actually, just project it because we'll probably be over Google Meet, so you can
Yeah.
just share screen during our meeting for that.
I'm,
Um,
I'm, te- I'm not technically savvy. That's my problem too. Because I don't want to mess it up and put it on screen or lose it. Or I guess that's what I'm saying is that I'm not computer savvy. So
okay.
that's one of the problems I had too, is because sometimes where I'm located, our signal is low, so I would lose signal with my coach or whoever I'm meeting with. So that
Mm-hmm.
was one of the problems that, but if you're more technically savvy than me. Probably are, because you're what did you say, you have a photo thingy, or what is it, your business? Well, anyways, that's what I'm saying. I'm not technically savvy, and I'm afraid I would mess up sharing it with you. That's one of the things that one of the other coaches, Heather, we had a coaching session. She posted on Google Share, I believe, and I I just downloaded it, and I'm trying to I work with it, not sharing my information, I guess I would say. If you
Okay,
understand
make
my
it Zoom.
problem.
It'll be fine. We can make it a Zoom. If you're easy to navigate Zoom, I can change it to a Zoom. So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, Zoom, it could be better, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I'll just change it to a Zoom, but it will be more of that. Okay. But I would just share it then. Like not I would
So
because
so if I share, okay, if I share it on Google, say if I go to Google and then I don't know, I'll have to look it up on YouTube how to share it and how to navigate through all of that stuff. Because what I understand is when you share it, then other people can use it, or other people can make changes or comment on it. Is that, I see, that's what I mean. I just don't understand. I just don't, but I'm afraid I'll mess up the whole thing.
so I guess like I don't know what you mean by share. So maybe we should wait until then to figure
Okay.
out what you mean by that because
Okay.
just like how I shared my screen, that's how I'm
Yeah.
defining share. So
Yeah, that's what I mean. I think, yeah, I'll lose it somewhere and mess it up something,
okay.
So
Okay.
okay. So do you suggest that I share my document with you, my template? Can I
No, 'cause
email
then Zoom. No, because that would be if you I would just if you do book a meeting with me, I will change it to a Zoom and then you can
it? Okay.
just share through the green button that's located at the bottom. You'll have
Okay,
permission to
okay, I
use it
see. Yeah. Okay,
and
yeah.
then it'll be fine. It'll be okay. So
Okay.
you just want to use
All
Google.
righty. All
Yeah.
right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Kayla,
Good job.
thanks. Kayla, how do I explain my pay to a lender if I'm not profitable yet? Yeah, I think that's where the positive essentially that's where you're showing in your cash flow and also to your intention in your business plan or BMC of what then resources you're going to attain or even to like strategies quote unquote of marketing or product production that then you're going to share that will get your business to being ultimately profitable. So, for example, let's talk about an earring business. Say right now, technically my earring business is in the negative because I haven't sold anything. I've just created a cost to my business of buying beads. But say that I want to go full time with my business and I'm like, hey, I need $1,500 because you know I think this $1,500 will launch me by paying vendor fees for over the summer of 5 shows and the travel and expenses to do so. But I haven't actually made any positive income in my business. However, I have supplementary income that I can prove. So I have my job with Change Labs. I can show that I can pay back that loan with my primary job through something like my personal tax returns or like pay stubs or whatever it is that I can show them, or even to like possibly my credit history that I can show them that I can actually handle the loan payment in which that they're going to give me. So then even though my business doesn't show that I'm profitable, I can actually show that I can handle the repayment of the loan. Does that make sense? Okay, perfect. Great questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate all your help.
Of course, no problem. All right, have a
Thanks.
great evening. Bye, Kayla.
Thanks, you too. Bye-bye.